My name is Caleb Warwick, 46 years old, a software engineer from Charleston, South Carolina. One June night in a sterile San Francisco hotel room, I opened my laptop after a grueling day at a tech conference. An email from my wife, Savannah, stared back at me. No subject line, just a few cold words: "I've found someone who deserves me. I've moved the $720,000 of your mother's legacy to my account. Goodbye." Attached was a photo: Savannah and Declan Holt, my college best friend, grinning on a lavish apartment balcony, wine glasses glinting in the sunset. My kids, Lila and Finn, weren't even mentioned, as if they'd never existed. Sitting there, I felt an invisible blade twist in my chest. But I didn't call her, didn't scream, didn't smash anything. I typed one reply: "Thanks for letting me know," because I'd seen the signs for months. Savannah thought she'd won, but she didn't know I'd been preparing for this betrayal. I'd already set the board for a game she'd lose. What would you do if the people you trusted most stabbed you in the back? Drop a comment below and join me as we unravel this story of deceit, justice, and rebuilding from ashes. Subscribe, share, and let's dive into the truth together. I grew up on the edges of Charleston, South Carolina, in a small clapboard house where the scent of marsh grass clung to everything. My mother, a single parent and night shift nurse, poured her life into raising me. She wasn't soft or sentimental, but her strength was a quiet kind, the kind that showed up in packed lunches and patched jeans. When she passed 5 years ago, she left me $720,000, her life savings and insurance, tucked into a trust with a handwritten note: "Build a family you're proud of, Caleb." That note sits in my wallet, still creased but unbroken, a reminder of what I owed her. I thought I'd done it. 15 years ago, I met Savannah Tate at a Low Country Labs charity gala. She was 27, a former art student, with a laugh that turned heads and eyes that promised adventure. She'd dropped out of college to chase dreams that never quite materialized, but her charm made you believe they still could. We married 18 months later, after a whirlwind of late-night talks and walks along the Battery. Lila came first, a sensitive girl who loved her violin more than anything. Then Finn, a scrappy kid with a basketball obsession. We bought a colonial-style house in Mount Pleasant, its wide porch shaded by live oaks, dripping with Spanish moss. It was the kind of home my mother would have called a dream, and I worked 60-hour weeks at Low Country Labs coding AI algorithms to keep it that way. Savannah didn't work. She didn't need to, she said, and I agreed. I wanted her to have the life she dreamed of: designer clothes, spa days, lunches at Charleston's finest restaurants. She joined social clubs, planned galas, and filled our house with art we didn't need. But somewhere along the way she drifted. The woman who once sketched portraits of Lila as a toddler stopped showing up for her daughter's recitals. The mother who cheered Finn's first basket stopped driving him to practice. I'd come home from work to find Lila, now 15, heating up leftovers alone, or Finn, 12, staring at the TV, waiting for a ride that never came. "Where's Mom?" I'd ask. "Out with friends," Lila would mutter, her voice heavy with something I didn't want to name. Those friends often included Declan Holt. He'd been my best friend since our college days at Clemson, the guy who'd stood by me when my mother got sick, who gave the toast at our wedding. Declan was a charmer too, with a quick grin and a knack for making you feel like the only person in the room. He'd been a financial broker back then, sharp and ambitious, until a scandal over missing client funds got him fired. I stuck by him, even loaned him money to start over. Lately, he'd been around more, showing up at our house for barbecues or dropping Savannah off after group outings. She'd mention him casually. "Declan said this. Declan thinks that," like he was just another friend. But her eyes lingered too long when she said his name, and I started noticing his car in our driveway when I was away on business. The first crack appeared a year ago. Savannah started complaining about our life. "I'm stuck, Caleb," she'd say, swirling wine in her glass. "I gave up everything to be your wife, to raise your kids." The words stung because I remembered her sketching dreams of art galleries, dreams she'd abandoned long before we met. I suggested counseling, but she laughed it off. "We're fine. I just need space." That space grew into weekend retreats with her social club trips that stretched longer each time. She'd come back with new dresses, new perfumes, and a smile I didn't recognize. Finn stopped asking when she'd be home. Lila started locking her bedroom door. 6 months ago, I noticed money missing from our joint account. $5,000 here, $10,000 there. "Charity donations," Savannah said when I asked. "You're always so busy, I didn't want to bother you." I checked the statements. No charities, just transfers to an account I didn't know. I asked her about it and she changed the subject, her voice sharp. Don't you trust me, she snapped. I wanted to, so I let it go. But trust is a fragile thing, and hers was fraying. Then there was Declan. He'd call late, and Savannah would step outside to talk, her laughter drifting through the porch screen. I overheard her once saying, Declan gets it. He sees me. I told myself it was nothing, that my best friend wouldn't cross that line. But Eleanor Brooks, our neighbor across the street, started dropping hints. Saw Declan's car again last week, she'd say, her tone careful. Savannah's lucky to have such a helpful friend. The final sign came 3 months ago. Savannah asked about my mother's legacy, where it was kept, how it was managed. We should invest it, she said, her voice too casual. Make it work for us. I said I'd think about it, but I didn't. Instead, I called Maggie Voss, my mother's lawyer, and moved the money into the trust's secure account, untouchable, without my signature. I didn't tell Savannah. I didn't want to believe she'd betray me, but I wasn't naive. Looking back, I see it all clearly. The late-night calls, the missing money, the way Declan's name slipped into every conversation. But back then, I clung to hope, to the family I thought we'd built. I wanted to believe Savannah was still the woman I'd married, that Declan was still my friend. I was wrong, and that email in San Francisco was about to prove just how wrong I'd been. The San Francisco hotel room felt like a cage, the hum of the air conditioner mocking the chaos in my head. Savannah's email burned into my vision. I've found someone who deserves me. I've moved the $720,000 of your mother's legacy. Goodbye. The photo of her and Declan Holt, my best friend, laughing on that balcony was a gut punch, but it wasn't a surprise. I'd seen the cracks forming for months, and I'd been preparing. Still, knowing didn't dull the pain, it just sharpened my focus. 6 months earlier, I'd noticed the first withdrawal from our joint account, $20,000 gone. Savannah had brushed it off as charity donations, but the bank statements told a different story. Transfers to an unknown account, no receipts, no explanations. I didn't confront her. Instead, I installed a financial tracking app on our home computer, hidden behind a mundane folder labeled Tax Docs. It flagged every transaction, every login attempt. By spring, I'd traced smaller withdrawals, $5,000, $10,000, siphoned off when I was on business trips. Eleanor Brooks, our neighbor across the street in Mount Pleasant, had started dropping pointed comments. Declan's car was here again last Tuesday, she'd said, her eyes narrowing. Helping Savannah with errands, I suppose. I should have acted then, but hope is a stubborn thing. I told myself it was nothing, that Savannah was just restless, that Declan wouldn't betray me. So I played defense quietly. I called Maggie Voss, my mother's lawyer, and moved the $720,000 of my mother's legacy into the trust's secure account locked behind my signature. I stored our house deed, my kids' birth certificates, and my mother's note in a bank-safe deposit box. I even upgraded our home security system, adding cameras that uploaded to a cloud server I could access remotely. Why all the tech, Savannah had asked, annoyed. Just keeping us safe, I'd said, and she'd rolled her eyes. That night in San Francisco, her email shattered any lingering hope. I didn't call her, didn't text. I opened my laptop and logged into the security cameras. The feed from our Mount Pleasant house loaded, and there they were, the Savannah and Declan in our living room. He was wearing my Clemson sweatshirt, sprawled on the couch I'd bought, drinking from my coffee mug. Savannah laughed, tossing her hair, her hand brushing his arm. Our dog Cooper lay at their feet, oblivious. Lila and Finn were nowhere in sight, probably upstairs, forgotten. My stomach churned, but I saved the footage. Evidence, I told myself. I called Maggie Voss from the hotel's secure line. Savannah's made her move, I said, voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. She claims she's taken the legacy money. Maggie's southern drawl was all business. She can't touch the trust, Caleb. I'll check her accounts for any unauthorized attempts. Send me that email. I forwarded it along with the photo. What's next, I asked. Stay calm, Maggie said. Document everything. She's digging her own grave. The next morning, Savannah called. I let it go to voicemail. Caleb, we need to talk. Her voice purred, all fake concern. The bank's being difficult about the transfer. Just confirm it's okay, and we can keep this civil. Civil. As if stealing my mother's legacy and abandoning our kids was a minor hiccup. I didn't respond. Instead, I accessed the tracking app. It flagged 3 login attempts to the trust account, all blocked all from an IP address in Charleston. She was trying and failing to break through. Back in my hotel room, I dug deeper. I'd set up a separate email account for sensitive documents one Savannah didn't know about. In it, I found alerts from the tracking app, including a forwarded email chain between Savannah and Declan intercepted when she'd used our home Wi-Fi. Declan's words made my blood run cold. "Move the money fast, babe. Once we're in Miami, he can't touch us. List the house low cash deal. We'll be gone before he's back." Savannah's reply, "I'm on it. Caleb's too busy coding to notice." My hands shook as I saved the email. They weren't just betraying me. They were planning to erase me from my own life. The tension spiked that afternoon when my phone pinged with a security alert. Someone had triggered the tracking app's firewall on our home computer. Savannah was on to me. Minutes later, she called again, her voice sharp. "Caleb, what's going on with the computer? I got some weird error about unauthorized access." My heart pounded, but I kept my tone neutral. "Probably just a glitch. I'll check it when I'm back." She paused, suspicious. "You sure you're not messing with anything? I'm in San Francisco, Savannah," I said, letting irritation creep in to sell the lie. "Fix it yourself." She hung up and I exhaled, sweat beading on my forehead. She was close to figuring out I was watching. I needed more. I called Eleanor Brooks, who answered with her usual bluntness. "Caleb, that man's been at your house every day this week. Saw them loading boxes into his car last night." Boxes. They were already moving out, assuming I'd crumble. "Thanks, Eleanor," I said. "Keep an eye out," she snorted. "Oh, I'm watching Honey." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the camera footage, Declan's smug grin, Savannah's laugh. But it was Lila and Finn who haunted me. Were they okay? Had Savannah told them I'd abandoned them? I texted Lila, keeping it light. "Hey kiddo, how's the violin coming, Miss You?" No reply. Finn didn't answer either. My chest tightened, not from anger, but from fear. What lies had Savannah fed them? I opened the email chain again, reading further. Declan had sent Savannah a link to a Miami real estate listing, a beachfront condo, $500,000. "Our new start," he'd written. My mother's legacy, meant to secure my kids' future, was being spent on their escape. But there was something else, a mention of Declan's old playbook. I cross-referenced it with a quick search, finding a news article from 5 years ago. Declan had been sued by a former client's wife, accused of siphoning her savings during an affair. No charges stuck, but the pattern was clear. He wasn't just my friend turned traitor, he was a predator, and Savannah was his latest mark. The realization hit like a wave. This wasn't just about me anymore. Savannah thought she was in control, but Declan was playing her too. And my kids were caught in the crossfire. I closed my laptop, staring out at the San Francisco skyline. Savannah's email had started this, but I'd finish it. Not with rage, not with fists, but with the truth. She and Declan thought they'd outsmarted me. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I flew back to Charleston under a sky heavy with rain, the kind that makes the low country feel like it's holding its breath. Savannah's email. "I've moved the $720,000 of your mother's legacy." "Goodbye," echoed in my head, but it was the silence from Lila and Finn that cut deeper. I didn't go home to our Mount Pleasant house. Instead, I checked into a budget motel off Savannah Highway, the neon sign flickering like my resolve. The room was musty, the bed sagging, but it was a place to think, to plan, to face the wreckage of 15 years of marriage. I called Lila first, on my fingers hovering over the phone, as if it might burn me. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice small, guarded. "Dad, where are you?" I forced a smile into my words, picturing her with her violin case, her dark curls falling over her eyes. "Just wrapping up a work trip, kiddo." "How's school?" There was a pause too long, and then she said, "Mom says you don't care about us anymore." The words hit like a sledgehammer. My throat closed up, and for a moment I couldn't speak. "Lila, that's not true," I managed. "I love you and Finn more than anything." She didn't respond, just whispered, "Okay," and hung up. I stared at the phone, my chest aching. Savannah wasn't just stealing my mother's legacy, she was poisoning my kids against me. Finn didn't answer his phone. I texted instead. "Hey buddy, how's basketball going, Miss You?" No reply. I paced the motel room, the carpet worn thin under my boots, and pulled up an old photo on my phone. Us at Waterfront Park 2 summers ago. Lila playing her violin on the pier. Finn tossing a basketball, Savannah laughing beside me. I'd worked late nights at Low Country Labs to pay for that vacation, to give them memories like that. Now it felt like a lie, like the family I'd built for my mother's memory was crumbling, and I'd been too blind to stop it. The next blow came at dawn. I logged into our bank account expecting to see the usual balance. Instead, a notification flashed, an attempt to refinance our Mount Pleasant house using my forged signature. Savannah had tried to pull equity $50,000 while I was in San Francisco. The bank had flagged it, but the audacity of it, the betrayal, made my hands shake. She wasn't just leaving me, she was dismantling everything I'd worked for brick by brick and using my name to do it. I forwarded the alert to Maggie Voss, my mother's lawyer, with a single line. "She's escalating." Maggie called back within the hour. "Caleb, this is fraud," she said, her voice sharp. "We can stop her, but you need to decide how far you're willing to go." I sat on the motel bed staring at the photo again. I remembered the night I stayed up until 3 a.m., building a science project with Lila, gluing planets to a foam board while she practiced her violin. I remember driving through the night from Atlanta to make Finn's 10th birthday, only to find Savannah gone off with her friends, leaving Finn with a babysitter. I'd promised my kids a stable home, the kind I never had growing up, the kind my mother fought to give me. But Savannah had abandoned them too. Lila cooking her own dinners, Finn waiting alone at basketball practice. Had I failed them by working too much? Was I the reason Savannah turned to Declan? The questions gnawed at me, each one a weight pulling me under. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Lila. "Dad, I saw Mom and Uncle Declan in the car last night. They were kissing. I didn't want to tell you. I'm sorry." My vision blurred. Lila, my 15-year-old daughter, carrying that secret because she didn't want to break our family. The pain wasn't just mine anymore. It was hers. Finn's a wound Savannah had carved into all of us. I typed back, "You did nothing wrong, kiddo. I'm here, always." But the words felt hollow. I wasn't there, not really, not when they needed me most. I drove to a diner near the motel, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like regret. As I nursed a cup, I saw Declan walk in. He didn't notice me at first, too busy laughing with the waitress wearing my leather jacket, the one Savannah gave me for our 10th anniversary. My blood boiled. I gripped the mug so hard I thought it'd shatter, imagining myself crossing the room, slamming him against the wall, demanding answers. Why my family? Why my kids? But I stopped. Finn's face flashed in my mind, his gap-toothed grin when I coached his team. Lila's when she played her first solo. They didn't need a father in a fistfight. They needed me to be better than that. I left the diner before Declan saw me, my hands still trembling. Back at the motel, I called Maggie again. "I want it all back," I said, my voice low, resolute. "The money, the house, my kids. Whatever it takes." Maggie didn't hesitate. "Then we fight Caleb. She's given us everything we need to bury her." I hung up, feeling a shift inside me. The doubt, the self-blame, the hope that I could fix this, it all burned away. Savannah and Declan thought they'd outplayed me, that I'd roll over while they built their Miami dream on my mother's legacy. They were wrong. I opened my laptop and reviewed the evidence. Maggie had started compiling the email chain where Declan coached Savannah to move the money, the security footage of them in my house, the bank's fraud alert on the refinance attempt. But it was Lila's text that sealed it. She'd seen the truth, carried it alone, and that was unforgivable. Savannah wasn't just betraying me, she was breaking our kids' hearts. And Declan, the man I'd trusted through college, through my mother's death, was complicit. I looked at the photo one last time, then closed it. The family in that picture was gone, but Lila and Finn were still mine to protect. This was the point of no return. I wasn't fighting for Savannah anymore, or for the life we'd had. I was fighting for my kids, for the promise I'd made to my mother, for the man I still wanted to be. Savannah and Declan had started this war, but I'd end it not with anger, but with the cold, hard truth. They'd underestimated me, and that was their first mistake. The motel room's thin walls did little to muffle the Charleston rain, but I barely noticed. Lila's text, "I saw Mom and Uncle Declan kissing," had pushed me past doubt, past pain, into a place of cold clarity. Savannah and Declan thought they could steal my mother's legacy, my kids' future, and walk away to their Miami fantasy. They were wrong. I wasn't the man they'd underestimated anymore. Sitting at the chip desk, I opened my laptop and began to build the trap they'd never see coming. I called Maggie Voss, first my mother's lawyer, whose low country drawl carried the weight of decades in courtrooms. "We're going all in," I told her, voice steady. "Fraud, theft, custody, whatever it takes to protect Lila and Finn." Maggie didn't flinch. "I've already got the bank's fraud team on the refinance attempt," she said. "Savannah's forged signature is a slam dunk. Send me everything else you've got." I emailed her the works the intercepted email chain between Savannah and Declan, planning to flee with the $720,000 of security footage of them in my Mount Pleasant house, the bank alerts, showing her failed attempts to access the trust. "This is a gold mine," Maggie said. "She's handed us her own conviction." But evidence wasn't enough. I needed to know their next move. I hired a private investigator, a grizzled ex-cop named Ray Calhoun, recommended by a Low Country Labs colleague. Ray didn't waste words. "Give me names, addresses, and a week," he said. I gave him Savannah Tate, Declan Holt, and the address of our house. 2 days later, he called with a bombshell. "They're renting a condo in downtown Charleston, 8 Meeting Street. High-end, paid with cash transfers from your joint account. Found receipts for furniture, art, even a new car. They're living large on your dime." My jaw tightened. "Anything else?" "Yeah," Ray said. "Holt's got a rap sheet. Sued 5 years ago for embezzling from a client's wife during an affair. Slipped the charges, but he's a pro at this." The news didn't surprise me, but it hardened my resolve. Declan wasn't just my traitorous friend, he was a predator, and Savannah was either his partner or his pawn. Either way, they'd pay. I asked Ray to keep digging to tail them, to document everything. "Watch for anything involving my kids," I added. "They're my priority." Ray grunted agreement. "Got it, Warwick. I'll have more soon." Next, I needed to protect Lila and Finn. I drove to my mother-in-law's house in Somerville, a 30-minute ride under dripping live oaks. Diane, Savannah's mother, had always been kind but distant, wary of her daughter's lifestyle. I knocked and she opened the door, her face softening. "Caleb, thank God. The kids are upstairs." Lila and Finn ran down, throwing their arms around me. Lila's eyes were red, Finn's shoulders tense. "Why aren't you home, Dad?" Finn asked, voice cracking. I knelt, meeting his gaze. "I'm fixing things, buddy. You and Lila are coming with me soon, I promise." Lila clung to me, whispering, "Mom doesn't care about us." My heart broke, but I held her tight. "I care. Always." Diane made tea and we talked quietly. "Savannah's been leaving them here for days," she said, frowning. "Says she's busy, but I know it's that Holt man." "What's going on, Caleb?" I told her the truth. Savannah's theft, Declan's betrayal, the forged refinance. Diane's face paled. "I raised her better than this. She agreed to keep the kids safe until I could file for custody." As I left, Lila grabbed my hand. "Don't let Mom take us, Dad. I'm scared." Her words were a vow I'd never break. "I won't, kiddo. You're mine." Back at the motel, I checked the security cameras. Savannah and Declan were in my house again, packing boxes, my books, my mother's old clock, even Finn's basketball trophies. My blood boiled, but I saved the footage. Then my phone pinged with an email from Declan, sent from a burner account I traced to his old fraud schemes. "Back off, Caleb. We've got proof you neglected your family. Sign over the money, or we'll take the kids." My pulse raced. The proof was a lie, but the threat to Lila and Finn was real. I forwarded it to Maggie, who called immediately. "This is extortion," she said. "He's overplayed his hand. We'll use it." I needed more leverage. Against Ray's advice, I drove to the Meeting Street condo at dusk, parking a block away. The building was sleek, all glass and steel, a far cry from our family home. I slipped into the lobby, posing as a delivery driver, and snapped photos of their mailbox labeled Eddie Tate, Holt, and a stack of moving boxes with Miami shipping labels. As I turned to leave, Declan stepped off the elevator, his arm around Savannah. I ducked behind a pillar, heart pounding, close enough to smell his cologne. "Once we sell the house," he was saying, "we're set. Caleb's too soft to fight." Savannah laughed, and I clenched my fist, resisting the urge to confront them. I slipped out, my photos secure. The next day, Maggie filed the divorce papers, citing financial fraud and emotional neglect, with an emergency motion for full custody of Lila and Finn. She also sent a cease and desist to the bank, freezing the forged refinance and locking Savannah's access to our joint account. I expected retaliation, and it came fast. Savannah hired Victor Crane, a Charleston lawyer known for ruthless divorce cases. Crane sent a letter claiming I'd been emotionally abusive, neglecting my family to chase career ambitions. The lies stung, but Maggie was unfazed. "They're grasping," she said. "Crane's fishing for a settlement. We'll drown him in evidence." Ray called with another update. "Caught them meeting a realtor at your house. They're listing it below market value cash. Deal quick close. Holt's pushing hard." I wasn't surprised, but the speed of it selling our home while Lila and Finn were still in it felt like a knife twist. I asked Ray to get the realtor's name and any documents. "Already on it," he said. "Also found a lease agreement for that Miami condo signed by Holt, paid with your money." The final piece came unexpectedly. Eleanor Brooks texted me a photo of Declan's car in our driveway, loaded with my mother's antique furniture. "They're stripping the place," she wrote. I thanked her and added the photo to my growing file. But it was a call from Lila that lit the fuse. "Dad, Mom came to Grandma's," she said, voice trembling. "She said we're moving to Florida with her and Uncle Declan. I don't want to go." My vision narrowed, rage and fear colliding. "You're not going anywhere," I told her. "I'm coming for you." I met Maggie at her office that night, the Charleston skyline dark beyond her window. We reviewed the plan file, a fraud complaint with the bank subpoena Declan's financial records, and pushed for an emergency custody hearing. "This won't be quick," Maggie warned, "but it'll be thorough. Savannah and Holt think they're untouchable. They're not." I nodded, feeling the weight of every choice. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about Lila and Finn, about the family my mother had dreamed I'd build. I lost Savannah, maybe even Declan, but I wouldn't lose my kids. The trap was set, and they were walking right into it. The Charleston courthouse loomed over King Street, its white columns stark against a sky bruised with storm clouds. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation, the kind that hums before a reckoning. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my tie too tight, my hands steady but cold. Maggie Voss, my lawyer, arranged our evidence like a general preparing for battle. Bank records, security footage, intercepted emails, and a sworn statement from my daughter Lila. Across the room, Savannah Tate, my wife of 15 years, sat beside her lawyer, Victor Crane, her face a mask of defiance. But her eyes flickered with something else, fear maybe, or the dawning realization that she'd miscalculated. Declan Holt, my former best friend, was nowhere to be seen, but his shadow hung over everything. The emergency hearing was for divorce custody of Lila and Finn, and Savannah's attempted theft of my mother's $720,000 legacy. Maggie had warned me it wouldn't be gentle. Crane's a shark, she'd said, her low country drawl sharp. But we've got the bigger bite. As Judge Evelyn Harper, a no-nonsense woman with silver hair, took her seat, I felt the weight of every choice that had led me here, every ignored sign, every quiet preparation, every sleepless night in that Charleston motel. Maggie opened with surgical precision. "Your Honor, Savannah Tate committed financial fraud by forging Caleb Warwick's signature to refinance their Mount Pleasant home, attempted to steal a $720,000 trust, and neglected their children Lila and Finn while planning to flee to Miami with Declan Holt." She presented the bank's fraud alert showing Savannah's forged signature and played the security footage of Savannah and Declan in my house, packing my mother's antiques while Lila and Finn were upstairs ignored. The courtroom was silent, but I saw Savannah shift her manicured nails, digging into her palm. Crane countered, his voice smooth as polished oak. "My client acted under duress, Your Honor. Mr. Warwick's long work hours at Low Country Labs left her isolated, emotionally abandoned. She made financial decisions to protect herself and her children. He painted me as a neglectful husband, obsessed with code and ambition, leaving Savannah no choice but to secure her future. It was a lie, but a clever one, designed to muddy the waters." Savannah nodded along, her eyes welling with practiced tears. I clenched my jaw, remembering Lila's text. "Mom says you don't care about us." Then Maggie dropped the hammer. "Your Honor, we have evidence of a premeditated scheme." She submitted the email chain between Savannah and Declan, projected on a screen for all to see. Declan's words glowed. "Move the money fast, babe. List the house low, we'll be gone before he's back." Savannah's reply, "Caleb's too busy to notice." The judge's eyes narrowed and Crane's confident smirk faltered. Maggie continued, presenting Ray Calhoun's private investigator report, a lease for a Miami condo paid with my money receipts for a new car, and photos of Savannah and Declan at the Meeting Street condo, living lavishly while my kids ate leftovers alone. But the turning point came when Maggie called an unexpected witness. Lila Warwick, my 15-year-old daughter, walked into the courtroom, her violin case clutched like a shield. My heart stopped. I hadn't wanted her here, hadn't wanted her to face this, but Maggie had insisted. She wants to speak, Caleb. Let her. Lila took the stand, her voice trembling, but clear. Mom stopped caring about me and Finn. She said, eyes fixed on the judge. She'd leave us for days saying she was with friends, but I saw her with Uncle Declan. She didn't come to my recitals, didn't pick Finn up from basketball. I heard her tell him they were moving to Florida, that we'd have to go too. I was scared. A tear rolled down her cheek, and I gripped the table, fighting the urge to run to her. Savannah's face crumpled, but not with remorse, with the shock of being exposed. Judge Harper leaned forward. Miss Warwick, are you saying your mother neglected your needs? Lila nodded, her voice breaking. Dad was always there, even when he worked late. He called, texted, came to my shows. Mom didn't. The courtroom felt smaller, the air heavier. Crane tried to object, but Harper silenced him with a look. Lila stepped down, and I caught her eye, mouthing, I'm proud of you. She gave a small nod, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Maggie closed with a final blow, Declan's email threatening to take my kids unless I signed over the money traced to his old fraud accounts. This is not a desperate wife, Your Honor, she said. This is a calculated conspiracy. Crane's rebuttal was weak, claiming Savannah was manipulated by Declan, but the judge's expression told me she wasn't buying it. After a brief recess, Harper delivered her ruling. Mrs. Tate, she began, her voice like steel, your actions constitute financial fraud and gross neglect of your children. The court orders you to repay $360,000 to Mr. Warwick, representing half the marital assets you misappropriated. The trust remains solely his. You are denied any claim to the Mount Pleasant property. Custody of Lila and Finn Warwick is granted to Caleb Warwick effective immediately, with supervised visitation for you pending further review. Savannah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Crane whispered urgently, but she shook her head, tears streaming. I felt no triumph, only relief. My kids were safe. Outside the courtroom, I hugged Lila and Finn, who'd been brought by their grandmother. We're going home, I told them, my voice thick. Finn buried his face in my chest, and Lila clung to my arm, her violin case bumping my side. Not with Mom, Finn asked, eyes wide. Just us, I said. The way it should be. The fallout came swiftly. Declan vanished the day after the hearing, leaving Savannah to face the wreckage alone. Ray Calhoun tracked him to Atlanta, where he'd already latched on to another wealthy woman, his pattern unbroken. Savannah called me that night, her voice raw. Caleb, please, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Declan pushed me into it. We can work this out. I let her words hang in the air, remembering Lila's tears. Finn's abandoned basketball games and my mother's legacy nearly lost. You chose your path, Savannah, I said, and hung up. Savannah moved to Jacksonville a week later, renting a small apartment, her socialite friends scattering like leaves in a storm. The Mount Pleasant house was quiet when I returned with Lila and Finn. We found it half empty. Savannah had taken what she could before the court's order. But Finn's trophies were still there, Lila's violin untouched. We stayed in a new place on James Island, a smaller house with a yard for Cooper, our dog. I didn't want the old memories, not yet. Low Country Labs sent an internal memo a month later. Declan had been arrested in Atlanta for fraud, caught siphoning funds from his new target. I didn't read the details. He was gone, and that was enough. Maggie called with an update. The bank had recovered half the stolen funds, and Savannah's repayment plan was in motion. You did it, Caleb, she said. You protected what mattered. But it was Lila and Finn who grounded me. That first night in the new house, Lila played her violin in the living room, a soft melody that felt like healing. Finn shot hoops in the driveway, calling Dad. Watch this, I did, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Savannah and Declan had tried to break us, but they'd only made me stronger. The war was over, and I'd won not for revenge, but for the family I'd promised my mother I'd build. A year has passed since the Charleston courthouse ruled in my favor, but the Low Country sun still feels different now, warmer, like it's carrying a promise. I'm standing in the backyard of our new home on James Island, a modest 2-story with a wraparound porch and a live oak shading the lawn. Lila, now 16, is planting a hydrangea bush, her dark curls tied back, humming a tune from her latest violin piece. Finn, 13, dribbles a basketball nearby, calling out, "Dad, bet you can't block this Cooper." Our dog bounds between them, tail wagging like a metronome. I laugh, the sound easier than it's been in years. This is home, not the Mount Pleasant mansion Savannah and I built, but a place where my kids can breathe, where I can be the father I always wanted to be. The courtroom feels like a lifetime ago. Savannah's tears, Declan's absence, Lila's brave testimony, their memories now sharp but fading. After the judge ordered Savannah to repay $360,000 and granted me full custody, I thought the victory would feel sweeter. It didn't. Winning meant nothing without Lila and Finn safe, without rebuilding what my mother's legacy was meant for. I sold the Mount Pleasant house 6 months ago. Too many ghosts lingered in its halls. Declan's laughter, Savannah's lies, the boxes they'd packed to erase me. The new owners, a young couple with a toddler, loved the oak-lined driveway. I walked away with enough to start over, to give my kids a fresh canvas. I left low country labs too. The 60-hour weeks coding AI algorithms had kept us afloat, but they'd cost me time with Lila and Finn. Time I'll never get back. I started a consulting firm, Warwick Solutions, working from home on my own terms. It's smaller, quieter, but it pays the bills and lets me drive Finn to basketball practice, sit front row at Lila's recitals. The $720,000 of my mother's legacy, untouched by Savannah's schemes, became the cornerstone of the Eleanor Warwick Foundation, named for her. Last month, we awarded our first scholarship to a Charleston high school senior, a girl who wants to be a nurse like my mother. Lila and Finn helped present the check, their smiles brighter than the low country sun. "Grandma would be proud," Lila said, and I had to look away to hide the tears. Healing wasn't linear. I joined a support group for single parents, a small circle of folks meeting in a West Ashley community center. Sharing my story, Savannah's betrayal, Declan's fraud, the fight for my kids, felt like shedding a weight I hadn't known I carried. The group listened, nodded, shared their own scars. One night, a woman named Clara, a widowed teacher, told me, "You didn't just survive, Caleb. You built something better." Her words stuck, a reminder that pain could forge strength if you let it. Savannah sent a letter 3 months ago, postmarked from Jacksonville. "I'm sorry, Caleb," she wrote. "I lost myself. Lost us. I never meant to hurt the kids." I read it twice, searching for sincerity, but found only excuses. She'd lost her friends, her lifestyle, her grip on the life she'd tried to steal. I didn't hate her anymore. She taught me too much for that. But I couldn't forgive, not yet. I sat at my desk, wrote a reply I'd never send. "You broke us, Savannah, but you didn't break me. Lila and Finn are my world now." I folded it, tucked it in a drawer, and let her go. Declan's name surfaced in a news alert last week. He's in a Georgia jail, charged with defrauding another woman, a doctor in Savannah. Same playbook, charm, theft, betrayal. I didn't read the article. He's a ghost like Savannah. A chapter closed. Eleanor Brooks, our old neighbor, still sends me updates from Mount Pleasant, mostly about her garden. But once she mentioned Savannah, "Heard she's working retail in Florida," she wrote. "Looks like she's starting over." I wished her well silently, but that was all. The kids are my anchor. Lila's violin fills the house most evenings, her notes weaving through the walls like a heartbeat. She's composing her own piece now, something she calls Low Country Lullaby. Finn's on the school basketball team, and I haven't missed a game. Last week he scored the winning shot, and his grin as he ran to me in the stands was worth more than any legacy. But they carry scars too. Lila sometimes wakes from nightmares calling for me. Finn asks if Savannah will ever come back. I don't lie to them. "We're enough," I tell them, and they nod, trusting me in a way that makes me want to be better every day. One evening, I took them to Waterfront Park, where we'd gone as a family years ago. The Charleston skyline sparkled across the Cooper River, and we sat on a bench sharing ice cream. Lila leaned against me. Finn tossed pebbles into the water, and for a moment, the world was right. "Do you miss Mom?" Finn asked, his voice soft. I thought about it, about the woman who'd laughed with me under these same stars, who'd become someone else. "I missed who I thought she was," I said. "But I've got you too, and that's more than enough." Lila squeezed my hand, and Finn smiled, a real one. My mother's note still sits in my wallet. "Build a family you're proud of." I didn't understand it back then, not fully. I thought it meant a big house, a perfect wife, a life that looked good on paper. Now I know better. Family isn't what you're given. It's what you fight for, what you nurture, what you rebuild when the world tries to tear it down. Savannah and Declan took their shot, but they didn't break us. They gave me a chance to see what really mattered. This story isn't just mine. It's for anyone who's been betrayed, who's felt the ground shift beneath them, who's had to start over. What would you do if someone you love tried to take everything? Would you fight, forgive, or find a way to rise above? Drop a comment below, share your story, and let's keep this conversation going. Subscribe to join the journey, hit that like button, and pass this on to someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's building something stronger from the ashes. Thank you for listening.